Hey y'all, so today I wanted to talk about problems and failure versus opportunity. And it's kind of a long video, and there's a lot of information that's kind of hard to keep track of, but I will do my best to stay on topic because Lord knows I am terrible at that. So I'm in my garden. And as you can see, it does not look anything like a traditional garden, right? Now, I'm a believer in gardening organically because soil and dirt are two very different, very separate things, right? And where we live, we have sand. There's not even dirt. So I have to turn sand into soil, which is insanely labor intensive. And I have been doing that. That's why you see all this random cardboard and what looks like trash and debris. That's actually food for the soil and the invertebrates and microbiome living in that soil that actually makes the nutrients soluble by way of mycorrhizal fungi. And obviously you can see it's full of trees. It's got my one tomato plant that is growing on the living trellis. It's got tomatoes and it looks really good and stuff. And the thing is, if you remember, these trees were a nightmare for me, right? They kept growing in the garden. I really needed this garden space for garden plants. And, I had this attitude. I was like, I got to get these out of here. They're growing where I don't want them. They're kind of a pain in the butt. They're hard to get up, yada, yada, yada. And so then one day, I'm out here and I'm like, I don't have any trellises. But I've got these trees, and they're super flexible and bendy. So why not, instead of going through the work and hassle of taking them out, why not just twist them up and make these trellises for my plants? So I did that. And I wasn't expecting the leaf growth that I got. And that actually was a blessing that I didn't realize I had, and I didn't realize I needed it quite as much as I did this year, just because, again, we're having massive issues with intense UV. So if you take the heat out of the picture and you take the drought out of the picture, the UV is enough to kill off a lot of plants, right? So I took what was a problem and I turned it into an advantage, and I'm going to keep doing that because, again, as you can see from this one, I cut it so that it has kind of like a mohawk so that it protects the tomato from the worst of the sun, which is that overhead all day baking in the sun. And I've got it so that it can just get early morning and late afternoon. But that's not the most important thing. That's just kind of one aspect. You'll also notice we have a lot of weeds. I don't even know what this is. It's probably some type... Ow! Ants. Ow! Okay, well, it's covered in ants. Hold on. The ants really like it. I don't know what... Ow! Hold on. Okay, well, ants are angry little bastards. I'm not gonna lie. But the thing about weeds is, it's defined as a plant that you don't want growing in an area that you don't want. And a lot of people, they look at dandelions as weeds. They look at wild lettuce as weeds, even though it's edible and medicinal and stuff like that. And the thing about weeds is they tend to show up in places that are lacking certain nutrients. So say for example, you're trying to grow in an area that is low in, I don't know, iron or calcium or anything like that. There's certain weeds that are going to show up in those types of soils, and you can actually tell what your soil needs by which weeds are growing in it. I'm not that good yet, but I'm working on getting there. But I let these weeds grow because whatever my soil is lacking, these somehow, I'm not going to touch this plant because, again, I just got my ass tore up by an ant. And I'm going to let them grow, and I'm just going to do what's called chopping and dropping. So I'll cut them down at the base, but I'm not going to pull the roots up. I'm going to let the roots stay, and I'm going to leave the plant matter where it is, because whatever nutrients are lacking in the soil, this plant has them. And this plant, as it decays, will put those nutrients that I need into the soil. Again, I don't know all the specifics behind it, except that it works. And so, yeah. So I'm keeping the weeds. I'm letting the weeds live. Most importantly is this is a habitat. Obviously, I've got ants. But let me see what else I can find. There's a dragonfly right there. I don't know if you can see it, but if I start digging, besides ants, I'm gonna find other stuff. Let's see what I can find. Hopefully I'll find some worms. This place was so bad off, we didn't even have worms. I had to buy worms. But you can see, instead of soil, sorry, I'm trying to like look at what I'm doing because it's hard to look through the camera. There's organic matter. It's not just sand. It does get down to sand. But if I dig around enough, and I don't want to because of snakes, I'm going to see earthworms. I'm going to see millipedes. I'm going to see invertebrates, little mites, probably springtails, things like that. A lot of people look at these things and they see them as unwanted. Unwanted doesn't mean unnecessary, and it doesn't mean unneeded, okay? So we need these things in our soil. That's what makes it soil. That's what differentiates it from dirt. Okay? Hold on, there was something else I was going to talk about, but it's like, it's so hot. I've already got sweat dripping in not awesome places. But yeah, there's bugs in here, which also serves a purpose, because now there's something for wildlife to eat. Okay? So when we get in our zest to remove garden pests or unwanted bugs, we're taking away a food source for another part of the ecosystem. And that other part would be reptiles, okay, birds, other bugs. And you know, you start out small. Again, you start with your little microbiome. You turn dirt into soil, and then you start attracting bugs that then become food for bigger animals like lizards and birds and stuff like that. So, you know, you could look at this garden and you could say it's ugly and it's hideous and it doesn't look anything like a garden should, and you would be 100% right. But that doesn't mean that it's a failure, and it doesn't mean that it's a waste, because it's the opposite. It's actually, it's performing a useful function. Is it working the way I had dreamed? No. But just because you're growing organically doesn't mean you're growing in harmony with nature. And in order to grow, these ants. I need an aardvark so bad. To be in harmony with nature, you can't just grow organically. You've got to provide things that nature needs. Let the pests come. The pests are going to serve as food for beneficial things like lizards, snakes, and birds. This is how nature operates. The reason we struggle with growing crops and food right now is because we're not doing it the way that nature has done it literally for millions of years. So I'm going to keep this space. I don't care how ugly it looks. I don't care that it's full of weeds. I'm happy that it's full of weeds. I'm going to continue to make my little living trellises out of these amazing, wonderful trees. I still don't know what they are, but they're awesome. And branch out and just keep going, because at this point in time, I've helped nature enough that nature is starting to help me back. And I want to keep that going. And this world really needs that. So let the weeds live. Give them water. Treat them like you would a garden plant, unless they're just absolutely directly inhibiting the growth of a plant you really need. Let the pests come. You can even create a pest plot where you can grow tomatoes just to support tomato hornworms, so that they can complete their life cycle and turn into butterflies, which are, a pollinator of sorts. And they need help too. And that way I don't have to kill the pests. I can save the crops in my garden, and nature still has a place to eat.